As we approach game 82 of the season, let's take a look back at some of the biggest storylines and how they unfolded for the Calgary Flames.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I'm your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Today, I will be revisiting some of the biggest storylines surrounding the Calgary Flames team from the start of the season to this very moment. And as many of you may know or may not know, Nick will now be hosting Locked On Oilers through the postseason, so you will be riding solo with me. But yeah, let's dive right into this. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. And I'm here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. There was a lot at stake for the Flames over this offseason, and we watched a lot of it unfold quite literally starting a year ago. It was a year ago today that the Flames announced Brad Treliving would not be back as general manager. And that was the first step to going maybe a different direction. And we got a new general manager, a new head coach, a new captain, and everything kind of, slowly unfolded and unraveled, leading us to the start of the season. Obviously, Brad Treliving moved on, and about a month later, Craig Conroy was hired and announced as the general manager of the Calgary Flames. I was at the Taylor Swift concert when that happened. Fun fact. But, it felt like they were getting somewhere because there were a lot of questions at the end of last season. And we didn't know when we'd have answers or if we'd have answers at that fact. But, the biggest test for Craig Conroy was how he handled the pending UFAs. And considering he went out in his first media availability and said, I'm not letting, 7 guys walk away for nothing. We saw that with Johnny and it's not happening. And that's what he handled that. It took a little bit, took, some finagling and some negotiating, but things transpired. And we're going to talk more about that a little bit later in the show. But one of the pending UFAs was, of course, Michael Backlund, and he was the longest tenured Flame at that point. And they didn't have a captain the season before or the season before that. And that was basically Daryl Sutter's call. It was, I'm not naming a captain for the sake of naming a captain. And I think that's a very fair assessment, and I will give him credit for that. But Backlund signed an extension, and then shortly thereafter, he was named captain. And that's great because the Flames needed someone to lead the room and to be a voice for them. I think that's something that a lot of teams don't always have. And even with a good captain, I think that sometimes there are players that step up and answer those hard questions. And I think we did see a little bit more of that from, players like Blake Coleman or Jacob Markstrom or Mackenzie Weegar, Rasmus Anderson. Like, they were always on the front lines answering the media's questions. And that's, hey, if that's what works, it works. I'm not going to question their method. A leader is a leader, and they all respect Backlund. So then of course, they did hire a coach, but we didn't know which way that was going to go because everyone really thought it was going to be Mitch Love. And there was reason to believe it would be Mitch Love because he had a lot of success with the Wranglers and getting the most out of those guys. And you also had Ryan Huska, who also was coaching with the Wranglers, and it made sense. It made sense to hire Huska. I think that he is very methodical and careful with his decisions. You know, we've seen a lot of line shuffling, line lines in a blender, but he's always had a good answer for why it happens. The obsession with Dryden Hunt is not something I understand, but again, he's a professional NHL coach and he might see something I don't. It's been very different having him lead this team. You know, he had I would say, a softer method and approach to this team, but it was still like tough love, I guess you could say. And he did what he could with what he had, and he did what he had to do. You know, benching Huberdeau for that third period against Nashville, that was a defining moment in the season. That was Huska's like first real putting his foot down. And he did. And it just shows you that it shows the room that, like, I don't care if you make $10 million or the league minimum. You're treated the same. You are the same to me. And that's fine. Like, that's what it needs to be. There can't be, um, I guess, different rules for different players. That doesn't work out very well. But one more thing before we move on here quickly, I forgot to mention about Craig Conroy and what else he had to deal with. People were worried that he was going to be a product of Brad Treliving, and he came in and offered Elias Lindholm $9 million for a 7 or 8 year extension. The Flames got incredibly lucky, and he turned it down. Other than that, that could have been a disaster. So while he did leave that offer on the table, it was not accepted. And we will count our lucky stars for that. But coming up next, we are going to move through the season and the road of uncertainty and how everything unfolded this season, because it has been a very long road. And we will be back right after this. It is time for the NHL postseason. And while the Flames are not in the playoff race, you can get in on the playoff action regardless of where you are. Maybe you go up to Edmonton and you go root for, I think they're playing the Kings. So go root for the Kings against the Oilers, but remember to be nice and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get $20 off of your first purchase. I love Game Time because they have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, view from your seats, and the lowest price guaranteed. And Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. With Game Time, I got to see Mackenzie Weegar's hat trick earlier this season on Long Island, and it was so fun. Not really looking to go to a hockey game? That's fine. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. That is code LOCKEDONNHL. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you everyone for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss a show. While the season was unfolding, we also had a lot of stories unfolding as well. And one of the better stories of the season would, of course, be Oliver Kylington coming back. Oliver Kylington missed 20 months of NHL hockey after taking his mental health into his own hands and getting help with what he needed. And he's been very open and honest about his uh, struggles and how he didn't think he was ever going to play hockey again. And it's a great thing to see him back in the NHL and to see him doing well, from what we see. And it's nice as human beings to know that, you can get through those dark times too. And so happy for Oliver Kylington to be back. And I hope the Flames do decide to offer him an extension this summer. That'd be very nice. While the season was progressing, there wasn't really much happening. And that was, of course, with the pending UFAs. Noah Hanifin, Chris Tanev, Elias Lindholm. I think I said Noah Hanifin already. Yes, Nikita Zadorov. Zadorov was traded early on in the season, and then you had Elias Lindholm basically playing like cow manure for most of the season. And, Craig Conroy kind of said, all right, pack it up. You're going to Vancouver, buddy. Get ready to learn Vancouverese. And got a killer return. I understand it's been a small sample size for both sides, but I think Kuzmenko has been so fun to watch, impactful, and they have a first-round pick and Hunter Brewsterwich, kind of in the shadows. So you get a lot of excitement there. With Elias Lindholm leaving, that also meant you had one less player on your plate you had to worry about, and more energy you could focus on to Noah Hanifin or Chris Tanev or Jacob Markstrom. And the Noah Hanifin situation really bothered me because it is nothing personal against Noah Hanifin. It has nothing to do with him. It was the way that things were reported, because that first report came out about him being offered a 7-year, $7 million contract extension, and him saying no, or leaning towards yes and then saying no and saying let's pump the brakes, and then revisiting it and heavily considering it. And there were a few people reporting it like, okay, Noah Hanifin's gonna, this contract's gonna be signed by the end of the week. You're gonna have Noah Hanifin long term. That obviously never happened. And it's interesting that that's how it unfolded, because I feel like, I understand beat reporters only know what they know and are told certain things. So for someone that works directly with, very closely with the team, to basically be wrong on a number of occasions, I don't know, felt a little funny to me. But obviously, him backing out was just really a blessing in disguise, I would say. I think that it's all up for interpretation, but I think it's better for the long-term picture that he didn't sign an extension. You are not going to be competitive in his prime, and he's going to be over the hill in hockey years by the time you're able to compete, and you're looking at things a lot differently then. Chris Tanev was never offered an extension, allegedly, which feels crazy because he plays a very, very important style of hockey that you don't see anymore. You do not see Chris Tanevs walking around. You do not see players throwing themselves in front of the puck like they are Secret Service, like you do with Chris Tanev. And I understand that he is a little bit older and he probably expressed interest in going to play somewhere where he has the potential of winning. And like Nick said on yesterday's show, he is someone that could retire in after this season or in 5 years from now, and it would make sense. Chris Tanev reminds me a lot of Zdeno Chara in the sense of he's not missing a game unless something is, like, falling off, and you got you got a lot of mileage out of Chris Tanev, and he he was special. I really liked what he brought to the Flames locker room and what was on the ice. I wish we could clone him. And it just stinks, right? Because like you obviously root for these guys to win that, wanted to be traded for whatever reason. But you also wonder what would have happened had they all stuck around. But I don't think we need to worry about that too much. Like it's okay to like tiptoe down that, but then just come right back to reality, right? But after Conroy pulled the trigger on those trades, you still had Jacob Markstrom just kind of living in limbo. And when these rumors started, it was very much he will waive his no trade clause for the right team. And he's not someone that enjoys being like the spotlight and the focus of those kinds of things. And he made that abundantly clear. And he supposedly approved that trade to New Jersey. And then for whatever reason, it wasn't completed. Could it have been the money retention issue? Could it have been trading, the return? It could have been anything. But Markstrom said that he did not like the way it was handled. And to me, that sounds like someone that has a soiled relationship now with management. Do I think a Markstrom trade is still possible for this summer? Yes. Do I think it is going to be what it would have been in February, March? No, I don't. I think it's going to be a little bit less. And I mean, if he approves the trade, he approves the trade. If not, you figure something else out because I haven't thought that far ahead yet. But regardless of what happens there, you have to start integrating Dustin Wolf. And I think it's fair to assume they are not re-signing Dan Vladar. I don't know why they would when you can integrate Dustin Wolf as that backup, but I also think you might need to move on from Markstrom, get a cheaper goalie to start, like a Cam Talbot, bring him back or whoever to start a chunk of your games and start filtering in Dustin Wolf. That's what I thought was going to happen this season, but the universe had other plans. Coming up next, we are going to look at the current storylines as well as what we might see pop up over these next few months. And we will be right back after a quick break. I have been told I'm a very competitive person, and that there is no denying that. We are all competitive. And my competitive side is a very big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. The best part is of course messing with my friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like the classic Monopoly. But now I can also heist their vaults for riches myself. And the leaderboard shows me who is the biggest Monopoly tycoon. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with your friends and people all around the world in time to tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. Thanks everyone for sticking around with me. I hope you're all enjoying your week. You can follow me on Twitter at Jess Belmosto. The Flames are once again in the trenches. They're still there. But this is where we want them to be. We don't want them to be hanging around. We want them to be in the thick of it. Because that forces you to do something about it. We know that ownership wants this team to win, right? We know that they want their money for their playoff game. So forcing their hand in rebuilding, retooling, adjusting, turning over the roster, whatever you want to call it, is good. And right now, as they approach not even the end of the season, but 3 months from now, trade deadline. I mean, free agency, not the trade deadline. We're moving backwards if that's the case. Free agency. Does Conroy have what it takes to stick to this path and to continue trudging through the trenches? Or is he just going to wave his white flag and say, someone help, someone help? It's very difficult for me to say, like, this is what I want the Flames to do. This is what I think they should do. Because quite honestly, there are a lot of things they could do. And that includes trading players like Jacob Markstrom or Andrew Mangiapane or Rasmus Anderson. Like, there were a lot of different possibilities that could force them further along, or I wouldn't say catapult them, but bring them assets or players that can continue this process. And they have said that they're looking to bring in a few veterans over free agency or through free agency, which I think is fine to an extent. You know, obviously you have only so many roster spots that are going to be available, and you only have so many players that you feel are ready to make the jump or could do this full time. Not everyone is going to stick the way Zary and Pospisil have. I feel like they got very lucky and fortunate with that. Pospisil was not supposed to sniff the NHL this year. For him to have played basically all season, minus a suspension, that is no, if you told me that was going to be the case, I would have laughed at you and said, are you sure you mean Pospisil? And good for him. It is great to see players moving along. He is effective. I wish he would rein it in a little bit. Him, Zary, and Kadri play really well together. I love it. I think it's great. And they've been able to play on different lines as well. Shows flexibility. That's what you want to see. Now, when you talk about moving pieces, you do have to think about Jacob Markstrom, like we just talked about, but also Andrew Mangiapane. He is 28 years old. He just turned 28 earlier this month. He is coming up on unrestricted free agency, not this summer, but next summer. And you don't want to be signing him to a long-term contract. Had he kept up the pace and production or stayed around those numbers that he had in 2021, 2022, we might be talking about a different story. But he would benefit from a change of not, I don't want to say change of scenery, because like it's not like he's performing poorly. I think that it would be in the Flames' best interest to trade him. And that this is coming from someone that is like the biggest Mangiapane fan. And it pains me to say that. I think the team should trade him. And I only think that because of what they could get in return for him. He will be a great flip at the deadline to a contender, Toronto. I mean, maybe the Bruins, maybe I don't know, the Islanders. Like, who knows where things will be next year? But the Leafs, maybe he wants to go play with TJ Brody and Gio again. Like those guys, he talks about them and how he really idolizes them. So, that's a possibility. And I also wonder what they do with Blake Coleman, because he had a career year this year, and that's fantastic. But do you explore trading him as well? I'm not signing off on all of this. I do not think that these are all things they should do. But exploring that might not be a bad idea. The Flames are not making the playoffs next year. It is going to take many acts of God to make that happen. I love this team. I have become so endeared by them and the vibes and who they are, and what they show us on social media. They appear to be good people that love what they do and really appreciate the city of Calgary. And I think that's neat. I think it is so important for this team to continue to sign players that want to be here. And Mackenzie Weegar has made it clear he wants to be here. He wants to bring a cup back to Calgary. That's your next captain. That is your next captain. They're going to rip the C off of Backlund's jersey after this extension, after his contract's up, and just slap it right to Weegar's, staple it right to him. I have a lot of respect for Mackenzie Weegar. It's not easy doing what he's doing, and I think it is time we put some respect on Mackenzie Weegar's name. And we will talk all about more storylines as they unfold this offseason here on Locked On Flames. I cannot believe that the season ends tomorrow. It is unbelievable. Thank you all for tuning in, whether you've listened every day or periodically, or if this is your first time. Thank you for making Locked On Flames part of your day. It has been another great season in the books. Hosting the show, I wish the results were better on the ice, but hey, that's Calgary Flames hockey. I will be back tomorrow, and we will be talking all about Game 82 and where this season went. But until then, stay safe, stay warm, stay dry, stay hydrated, stay moisturized. and I'll see you tomorrow.